7 of Social Selling 2.0. I'm Tom Burton with Carson Hetty, who we can see today. You're so crystal clear.
Also representing, we've got a St. Louis episode here today with my friend Kristie Jones.
Nice.
And we have Brandon Lee and yes, our special guest, Kristie Jones from St. Louis. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, Carson, Brandon, doesn't he look super clear now? And we can see him
clear.
and he got rid of his dial-up and he put in high-speed internet, he said.
The new laptop.
Yeah.
That's why.
New laptop. Oh, Kristie's got the cool backdrop light, the purple light going. That looks good.
Thank you. Yeah. The pandemic studio happened. Yep.
All right.
We should do a video like comparing and contrasting what our home office is pre-pandemic to now. But no, my laptop looks so much clearer. My old one had no bandwidth because it was so full of social selling leads.
Oh.
It was stuffed. It was overdone with that. All right. Well, if you're online listening, Butch, welcome from Atlanta. Yeah. Jump in. Let us know where you're from. So we've got 2 St. Louis, 1 Atlanta, and 1 California, Santa Barbara. So, all right. Well,
in the Dodge.
And we got 2 weeks in a row. So next week we got Mike Weinberg, also St. Louis birthday episode. So we're excited for that.
Yes. You guys are gonna love that.
He's the best. He's awesome.
He is the best.
Well, Kristie, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and then we're going to jump in and talk I know you have a new book coming out next year, but kind of talking about some of the things about, the playbooks for creating your own income goals and kind of being in that top 10%.
Yeah, I kind of got started out of school in retail. So I have a retail sales background of 8 years as well. I was a buyer for Macy's, worked in the stores and for a couple of years and then went into the buying offices. And then got a little discontented with corporate America. That Fortune 500 thing looks good on your resume, but it's not as fun as it looks on the resume. So left that and really kind of took a leap of faith. I made a decision that I needed to leave and decided I was going to look for a company and not a job. I kind of knew what I wanted from a value system standpoint, perhaps things that were missing in my last role. And so I actually joined a local company, bootstrap company here in St. Louis. Called bizlibrary.com. And I cut my teeth. I'm so old, gentlemen, that we called it subscription model back then. We didn't have this cutesy little SaaS acronym that we now use. So I go back that far, but I spent 10 years really figuring out the sales leadership piece of that. So I came in, I took a leap of faith on the owner, and I say I took a leap of faith, but now I know that he took the leap of faith in me. And I think we had, we may have had 10 or 11 employees at that point and about $1 million in revenue. And I spent the next 10 years helping him build out his company. So I cut my teeth the hard way, figuring out, I had no idea. I didn't know about sales leadership and SaaS. I didn't know about customer success. In fact, again, I'm so old, we didn't call it that. We called it account management. So I spent 10 years figuring all that out, and I took on a bunch of different hats as you do in a small company. So I said, if we were out of Post-its, that was me. If the copier, again, look that up on Google, copier is jammed, that's me. And if the server needed rebooted, no problem, because it was just down the hall in the coat closet at the time. So I could reboot the server too. They didn't let me code, but I could definitely unplug and replug in the server. So I learned a lot. That was really the best experience I ever could have had, because it was small, and then we grew up. We got it to 50 by the time I left. But the owner was great, and we did a lot of collaborating together. I knew at that point that I was an executor of other people's ideas. So we're going to talk a little bit deeper about what it means to, set your income and own your life. And part of that is knowing yourself. And so I knew that I was not the entrepreneurial spirit idea person, but I was I can take that. I'm very organized. I'm a process-driven person. I can execute your idea. So we did everything from build an LMS from scratch because we were in the e-learning business. And so we built LMSs and we resold other people's content. Initially, again, I'm so old that we shipped VHS tapes, training tapes around the country. The UPS man came in the morning to drop off packages. He came in the afternoon to pick up packages. It was still subscription model because you paid for the number of training VHS tapes you wanted to have out at any given time. So it was truly a lending library, if you will. Then we went to DVD, and then we went to streaming. We went to e-learning. So I learned everything. That was when I first came in, the sales reps were keeping what they caught. And then all of a sudden we realized that we weren't getting any new customers because they were fat and happy, just doing howdy doody calls, as I affectionately call them, the check-in call, just calling a check-in. So pretty early on in my sales leadership career there, we separated that out and grew an account management team, which became a customer success team. And then after that, the next company after that, which you now know as web.com, I've been in a lot of companies that got acquired, by the way. There's a pattern here. And so I went from that situation to running a $28 million department in 2 different states, Scranton, Pennsylvania, and across the river in Illinois. VC. So that's when I got the VC backed bug. They were VC backed, and I was like, ooh, this sounds fun. And it was fun until they get bought by web.com, and all executives are required to live in Florida. So I was employee number 1 let go. So that was my first being let go situation. I say, unfortunately, it gets easier because I've had it happen twice now, which is why I started my own business 8 years ago. Chances are slim that I'm going to fire myself. But that was amazing because that was inbound and outbound, and it was transactional, and it was land and expand, and it was all of the, I mean, it was crazy busy. Everything, again, from selling a URL to building a website to SEO, PPC, hosting, all kinds of fun things. Again, once you get VC backed, the pace picks up to some ridiculous level. And I took the job because I wanted to work for the boss. I reported directly to the COO. And for some reason, during the interview process, I knew he would make me better. The day I realized that was the case was the day he showed up in my doorway. I was only 2 doors up from him, an executive row. And he said, "Amazing day yesterday." And I'm like, "I know, right?" Like, I was like, I'm a badass. Yes, it was. And he goes, "So how come?" I was like, "What?" He's like, "How come it was such a great day?" I was like, I just looked at him. He goes, "I'll be back." I go, "Okay, see you soon." And that's when I realized that that's what it's like to work for somebody like that, that you have to justify your good days and your bad days, not just postmortem and justify your bad days. So, so I stayed in the VC backed kind of SaaS world for a while. And then I got an opportunity. My last real job, as I say, was building out the first SDR team for Gainsight. And so that was an amazing opportunity. You don't get an opportunity to do that very often, right? As a sales leader coming in at 0 and building something from scratch and handpicking every single person on your team is just as cool as it sounds. It really was a great experience. And then that company became, that became the first unicorn in their space. So I got to check that off my resume as well. But 8 years ago, I thought, you know what? I definitely understand this world. The startup world, the SaaS world, building things out. Again, like I said, I was process driven. So I decided that I could do this for lots of people. And so I started my own consultancy, and now I help early stage companies, VC backed mostly, but not always, build out their processes, strategies. I say I'm a consultant who gets her hands dirty. So I go in and, I bake everything out in your playbook, but then I also customize and build out your CRM system. I do the training. I spend a lot of time helping people hire. That's one of the things that early stage tech startups and tech founders are mostly the tech side. They don't have a lot of sales and marketing experience. So I got tired of walking into companies and saying, "Yeah, you mishired." And so finally somebody said to me, like, "Well, if you think you can do it better," and I'm like, "I totally can do this better. I've been doing this forever." So now I have a hiring help side of my business where it's not a recruiting or a staffing agency. I basically project manage the hiring process. So I handhold and walk my clients through that. I lead the interviews. I vet the resumes. My team and I do all of that. So I've just had, again, I lead a blessed life, just so you know, because there'll be things I say that you're like, really? But I really just like, my motto is I have 30 minutes for everyone, motto number 1. And motto number 2 is do the right things and the right things will happen. And when I decided to start my own business, like I cashed in some chips, in fairness, but the universe also conspired to put me in the right position and really supported me. And so I've just had the most amazing time over the last 8 years helping companies, get out of that $1 million mark and on their way.
Kristie, fascinating story, and thanks for sharing that. And I think what's interesting too is, like, when we came on, even before the show, we were talking a little bit about, like, I feel like every day when I pull up my social, there you are. And I've seen your social presence really evolve over the last, couple of years since we met. Talk to us about that. How are you leveraging some of the new tools? What have been some of your learnings, and how you are able to engage with your audience now, thanks to digital selling tools?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a long time I was trying to figure out how to do what I call one to many. So I felt like I've got important things to say, and I can help sales reps make more money and be more successful. But I'm only one human, and I mostly stay. I've been working in the startup space, so I'm not working with teams of 200. I'm working with teams of 2. And so social is absolutely a strategy for that because I can touch a lot of people. I'm working hard to build out my social community. And, I like to your point, like I didn't have a YouTube channel this time last year. My Instagram was private. I was just basically playing on LinkedIn. But I've realized that people, there are consumers of my content, and people who think along the same way that I do, or who are trying to figure it out. Yeah. And so I have spent some time and energy trying to build out my social and really I'm trying to be kind of human about it in a way where I want to make sure I'm not really using AI tools. I am using a third-party company who, like, I send the content and they make it pretty. So all the pretty factor I don't do. They do all the pretty factor. But I write, I mean, all of that content I wrote. I'm not outsourcing that at all. That's all me. I have a journalism degree, surprisingly. So I actually love writing. But it really, like, how else would I connect? I can't figure out another way to really connect with the people that I'm trying to help other than through social.
Yeah. And I think that's the cool thing is, follow Kristie. That's your first homework, everyone.
Thank you.
I think the key element is, I've seen her dabble in some of the ways that she's leveraged video, and she's a great storyteller. Those experiences that you have in even the 1 and 2 people organizations, those are things that can be extrapolated when you speak to the masses. So I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I have a question related to, we don't tend to talk a lot about just SaaS oriented businesses on this show. We're, I think, a bit broader. But what are you seeing in the SaaS world? SaaS historically, VC backed SaaS has been, kind of the churn and burn SDR. I think you mentioned earlier, quantity over quality.
Yep.
Are you seeing that there's more and more of an awareness within these companies that social and using social needs to be part of the playbook? And are you seeing that the companies are recognizing that maybe the way that they've always differentiated sales and marketing, that they need to be a bit more working or hand in hand as more of a revenue organization, leveraging social and building more human relationships rather than just trying to get through the numbers?
Yeah, it's interesting. I read something yesterday, and I wish I could remember where, but I read a lot of things. But they were talking about the SKO, because sales kickoffs. Again, this is me living in the SaaS world. But SKOs are going to be happening in Q1 of next year. But they said, you know what? We need to stop calling it an SKO and start calling it an RKO, a revenue kickoff, and it needs to involve everyone, including marketing. And I love that. I stole that right away. I was like, oh yeah, that's what we're going to call it going forward. Because, there isn't, like, I've never had an adversarial relationship with marketing. In fact, I love the marketing department. We work in tandem, and they should be, again, like what I say is ideally, because I'm a little selfish for my sales background, my sales leadership background, but I would love for marketing to warm up something before I go into it. So, but I think that marketing message and sales, well, I don't think marketing message and sales messaging are different, and everybody needs to stay in their swim lane, but they can support each other. We all need to be in the same boat, rowing together, but maybe we're in a different swim lane. And so I think it's a combination of everything. I love that marketing has gotten into things like podcasting. I love that marketing has gotten, webinars. We were a little zoomed out there for a while, but I think webinars are coming back. In-person events. I mean, if you read the stuff that Gartner's putting out, in-person events. So all of that, what does that all say to you? That's the human piece that the automation is missing, is that people are craving, they want to hear people being real on podcasts. They want to hear advice on webinars. They want to meet people in person at networking events and at trade shows and conferences. So I think you're going to see a switch. I even talked to a client yesterday and mentioned the word postcard out loud and said, have you thought about sending a postcard or a big red envelope? And that, again, that's personalized, that needs to be customized. And I think that as we spend more time talking about AI, because everybody's trying to wrap their head around that, you're going to see that the people who are, again, there's definitely a place for AI in sales and in business, but I think you're going to find that the people who are doing things a little bit differently are going to come out ahead.
If you can use AI to secure more time to spend authentically connecting with people, gold. That's where AI helps sales.
Yep, efficiencies for sure, and research. I think one of the things I'm still frustrated about is the lack of what I'll call pre-call planning. And I say to anybody who will listen, like, it's rude and disrespectful to ask a question that Google can tell you, right? Or that ChatGPT can tell you. So why are we not using the tools available, including AI, to do our pre-call planning so that we can just confirm what we learned? And then, but we have then that, big critical thinking question that we should be asking, but we shouldn't be asking anything that we can find on the internet.
Yeah. Kristie, practically, you said a lot of great things about where things you believe they're moving, even to postcards, and I've seen that. I've got a background in print and direct mail, and a lot of friends in that are talking about, it's starting to pick up again. People are looking for ways. What are some of the more practical ways that you see as we focus on revenue kickoffs and revenue teams instead of sales and marketing? Or some of those tangible ways that you see teams are starting to try and be different and be more human?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it goes back to research. So, and I say kind of two ways. Like, we are using automation, right? The clients that I'm working with, we are using sequences in HubSpot, or we're using SalesLoft or Outreach, but I'm not automating everything anymore. So I'm putting manual steps in there. So as an example, I mean, again, I have a decent amount of followers on LinkedIn. I still probably only get one or two messages, not just even in-mails with people who maybe are a first connection with me. And I read every one of those. Right. And so because I read every one of those, I think that I'm probably not the only one. And so we're doing a lot of trying to connect with people in a personal way through LinkedIn, through social. I tell a story. Back in the day, I was a prospect here in St. Louis, and I just knew that he should be my customer. I had loved everything about what his product and service were doing, and who he was. And we had a great discovery call, and then he ghosted me. He disappeared. But I was not deterred, because I was like, definitely going to get this guy. And so I happened to start doing my research and stumbled across his Twitter page. And I noticed that he was a Belgian beer lover. And so the next email I sent out was subject line, buy you a blue moon. And he said yes. And we had lunch, and I brought him a 6-pack. And so those are the kind of things that can happen. And then on the email side, I want my SDRs or my AEs or my prospectors going out to the company website. Company website is chock full of good things. And, right now, a lot of my clients, turnover is a huge problem, right? And so the first page I take people to do some research is the careers page. What job openings do they have? How could that be impacting the company? When you see, 50 job openings or 75 job openings, and then you start seeing a trend of who are they looking to hire, there's a problem there, right? Like, you already know what some of the problems are. You may think you're selling accounting software, but if we're looking for people in accounting, then you know that perhaps the software can replace maybe a human or part of a human, or let that human do other more important things. So I just don't think, this goes back to my pre-call planning. I just don't think we are digging deep enough. And I mean, I feel like back in the day, again, I'm old, back in the day, I would literally, back when I was, and I still do this, because again, somebody was teasing me that I have Tom, I think you were teasing me that I have my paper here, my notes for you guys. But if I know I'm going to be in the room with, whoever it's going to be, and there's sometimes 2 or 3 people, and when I'm prospecting and talking and doing discovery calls, I print off their LinkedIn profile. Yeah. I have my questions in front of me. I've been to their company website. I've done my homework. And I just don't think we're doing enough homework, which means if we're not doing enough homework, how can we do the human to human connection?
I could not agree more with that, Kristie. And I think it's almost irresponsible if, to your point, we fail to use some of these tools to plan, but also even using them in the meeting. I've got a couple of screens set up, again, kind of comparing and contrasting the pre-COVID home office to now. I've got a couple of screens set up. I've got my notes. And every customer conversation I go into, we're meeting with these executives. I usually have a few of my really smart people on with me, and I set up these back channel chats. And it's like, the fact that I can, in essence, read my sales colleagues' minds while we're in a meeting by, in essence, sending a message to them saying, hey, this is the desired outcome. This is what we want to do. How about we ask about this? I mean, you can quarterback your team behind the scenes in a sales meeting. It's unbelievable. But the fact that all of these things are at their disposal. But the big takeaway, what you said earlier, don't ever ask something in one of these discovery meetings that you can easily look up and find. Like, it's irresponsible not to use the tools in order to uncover and unpack those things.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, those are two big things that I heard you say. Is I love that. Don't ask a question if you can get it on Google. But I want to highlight too, we've talked about this on the show. I mean, our show is Social Selling 2.0. And a lot of times when we talk to customers, they're very centric on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Like LinkedIn, we're business. I mean, we've had conversations over the last few weeks when we were doing some video work for customers, and we're saying, hey, we're going to use this. We're going to put it in Facebook. We're going to go to Instagram. We're going to go to TikTok. And it was like, no. Our customers are on LinkedIn. We're like, no, your customers are everywhere. And I love how you said you went to I think you said you went to his Twitter profile.
I did.
And found out that he was a Belgian beer lover and did your research from there. So even if we're not necessarily communicating with people on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or wherever, especially I think Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, where it's public or more often public, I mean, just a wealth of knowledge right there to be able to connect human to human with people. Right. And I talk about, like, when we're on a Zoom or you're on a Teams meeting, you can look in the background and find out information about people. You can do that even more just by going to look them up on Twitter, go and look them up on Instagram, find out what their hobbies are, what they do for volunteer work, whatever it may be. Man, that is such a great way to connect with people. I'm so grateful that you shared that example with us and with our audience today.
I had a procurement guy few years back that was just beating me to a pulp, right? And I went out and some of his Facebook profile was public, and I found out his favorite sports team. So guess what just happened to come up in our next conversation?
Right.
Changed the whole dynamic of the relationship from there.
Yeah.
Was it St. Louis?
Nope.
We can't talk about it. We're not talking about it.
No.
So Dave is doing his homework, and he says, Kristie, that he knows you're a Jayhawk. So,
I am a proud Jayhawk. I'm going to need all of your good thoughts and prayers this weekend as I head to Lawrence, Kansas to take on the OU football team. So I'm going to need everyone's support.
There you go. As long as you're not playing against Mizzou, a lot of us can root.
I know. I miss the rivalry. I really do.
Yeah, I know.
It's coming back though. Basketball, we're coming back this year.
That's true.
Yep.
Man, you're becoming a two-sport school there.
I know, isn't it? I used to say, like, I used to fly my flag with pride, but just not during football season.
Yeah.
Mizzou's had some suspect years there too, but they look good this year in the football and the gridiron.
Yeah. Again, you guys made your way into the top 25. Congratulations.
Finally. Yeah.
You know what I think we should do is I think we should turn this into a sports podcast. With a little.
I can only talk about football and basketball though. Okay. And tennis. I can talk about tennis.
Season 3, social selling in sports. 3.
Oh, that's right.
I like it. I want to come back for one of those, please.
You're in.
Here's what I want to highlight for everybody to notice, that when Dave brought up Jayhawk, that Kristie went to Kansas, his wife went to Kansas. Did you notice how our conversation lightened up?
Very much.
We started talking about sports. And one of the things that we've talked about is we don't separate our human heart ever from who we are, even though we tend to lead with our title. We're on a Zoom, we're on a team, and we're having a serious conversation. When we bring up those personal anything, the conversation changes, walls drop, we connect better with people. And as long as we're doing things like doing our homework, we're prepared, we're offering great value and everything, it differentiates us from the others. And remember when Anthony Iannarino was on and he talked about 2 different companies came in and did their presentation. And then they sat down with the team and said, okay, well, what was the difference? And he was like, one was taller and had blonde hair. Like there was no differentiation between them, but you do 1 or 2 little things personally like this. Yep. You stand out, you're remembered, and you connect better human to human. And it's a huge, huge difference.
I had a quick story, and then I want to tee up some more questions for Kristie. It is just in line with that. I had a CISO a few years back. Security is often very challenging to crack into that that line of business, just because they have their own uniform way of doing things, and often they get hired on specifically for the strategy that they're going to bring to bear and implement. And it's obviously very important to those organizations. I had a CISO that would not give me the time of day, so I went out, started doing some research on him, found some blogs, found some podcasts that this person had been on, and took a totally different approach. I reached out and I offered to, I said, first off, I'm very impressed with what you've built from a thought leadership perspective. And I would love to get you introduced to some of the thought leaders in my organization so that we can learn from each other. And that was what did it. That's what got the response. And not coincidentally, 6 months later, we signed a $70 million deal together. So, those are the things, the normal blockers that you run into, there is a way around or over them. We just have to find them. And I think that's what the top salespeople do. And Kristie, I really want to dive into that, because I know that's one of our questions for today is, how do you kind of build that predictability to your income, but also what are the best of the best doing today?
Yeah, thanks for teeing me up for that.
Of course.
I spent a lot of time thinking about this and working with top 10%ers, and which led me to writing the book, Selling Your Way In. And Tom, you mentioned the setting your income and owning your life, the playbook for that. I think a couple of things. One, people so the difference between a job and a career. And so the top 10%ers understand that they're building a career and they're building a sustainable career. And so I have a term for this. I call it making the right step change at the right time. And so this all starts, though, with knowing yourself. So one of the chapters in the book says you have to know yourself before you can know the prospect. And I really think that people don't understand, one, I don't think they understand at all how many different sales roles there are out in the world. And so they're picking the wrong one. We talk a lot about hunter farmer, but no one talks about onboarding and implementation specialists. Very few people talk about sales engineer or solution consultant. Very few people talk about customer trainer. And there's so many sales roles out there. And if you want to be in sales, or you are in sales, but you're not hitting, that top 10%, it's perhaps that you have picked the wrong role in the wrong company, selling the wrong product or service, and working for the wrong leader. And so the book is not a how-to sales book. It's a how to know yourself well enough. And then in the first section, I teach you about, do you know what your sales secret weapon is? What's your sales superpower? What swim lane should you stay in? So, I have a very specific swim lane. I work with companies that are 0 to 5 million, SaaS companies, early stage startups, mostly VC backed. That's my niche. Like, I know everything about that world. And I think that people are not taking enough time to really think about, how do I like to be, rewarded financially? What's my risk tolerance? Again, you have to have a pretty high risk tolerance to be in a startup, but not as much in a mature company. Do I need SOPs, standard operating, processes and procedures? Or do I like the fly by the seat of my pants? Do I like the excitement of coming in every day, not knowing what's going to happen? Or do I need that predictability? And so I think, first off, the top 10%ers have figured that out, and they know when to leave. Like, I'm not encouraging people to quit their job, but I am saying that once you've gotten as much as you need out of this job, and you're set up for the next job, and that means things like, my average sale today I'm selling is 10,000. That next job, it should be 50. Maybe the sales cycle is now 30 days, but it needs to be 3 months. Like, they're taking that next challenge, but they're being very strategic. It's the chess match, right? They're looking 2 steps ahead, and they go, if I want to be here, I may need to take this job as my interim to get to that next level. The other thing that top 10%ers are doing that the other 90 haven't figured out yet is, this is the Kristieism for this. The work to get to the top doesn't actually happen at work. It happens outside of work. And what I mean by that is, the top 10%ers are investing in their own personal and professional development. I ask an interview question that is the following: Tell me 3 things that you do consistently, regardless of the company you're working for or the job role that you're in, that you believe if you do these things, you're going to be successful. And hear what top 10 percenters tell me the following. I'm at the gym at 6 a.m. every morning. I have a spiritual practice. I listen to a sales or business podcast every week. I read a business or sales book every quarter. I put my phone down for 2 hours a day so I can be present with my family. Those are the type of things that top 10 percenters understand. And because I'm a former athlete, I guess I'm still a current athlete, but I was a bigger athlete in college. I know the mind-body combination and connection. And so the people that are taking care of their mind, are taking care of their body, are taking care of themselves spiritually, religiously, whatever it would be, those people are going to be, they're just putting themselves in a better place to perform at a different level. And I think the other 90 is confused when they sit next to Carson and they hear what Carson's saying on the phone and they're like, saying everything that Carson's saying. They don't have any clue what Carson's doing outside of those 4 walls and 8 to 5. Those are the things that are setting Carson up for success in the future.
Love that. Kristie, here's a couple of things too that I think are really in line. I mentor a lot of folks, and I had a conversation very similarly earlier today. And, we were talking about career and, kind of building that body of work, right? And a mentor told me years ago, especially in sales, follow the zeros. Go where the checks that are being written have the most zeros behind them. Because guess what? That's where you're going to maximize your payout. Master your craft, which happens in and out of the workplace. But it's studying, like, what gets me paid, what doesn't, what are those low revenue generating opportunity things that I need to jettison, and then what are the things that I need to gravitate toward, who are the people that I need to gravitate toward, and the opportunities like reading and podcasts that are going to make me better. And then lastly, what you said, finding that superpower, but explore every way that you can elevate everyone around you. Because if you elevate everyone around you, guess what? That's what raises your ship. So,
well, I think there's another really, really good point you brought up, Kristie, and it kind of ties into the RKO we were talking about a minute ago.
Yep.
There's a lot of ways you can participate in a revenue organization, and not everybody should be an account executive. Not everybody should be a BDR. Not everybody should be a marketer or a whatever. But I think if you look at, again, that holistic revenue organization, and you look at how I can, and client success is a great example, right? Client success is integral to certainly expansion, net revenue retention, all the things that are a SaaS metric, right? Yep. Those are really important. If you look at it from that perspective, where can I best maybe even start? Maybe I want to become an AE, but I'm not ready for that. And I've known a lot of good AEs that came from SEs, that came from system engineers or software engineers, and then graduated up into that AE sort of role. And they're the best because they're not salespeople, they're consultants, they're guides along the way. So I think that's a huge point as we look at that holistic revenue point of thing. The other thing too is there was a question here from Anupam about saying, hey, it's really good to talk about big ideas, right? But there's a big chasm between ideas and actual execution and in revenue. Obviously, that's a big question, but is there anything that jumps out to you, Kristie, that says, hey, if there's just a couple of things that I would, focus on to go from idea to execution, and talk about the VC world, right? They all start with ideas and they have to execute. What would you touch on?
I would say formalization. And I say I'm a pretty flexible leader and consultant. If somebody wants to try something, I'm all for it. But I say to them, are you committed enough to your idea to do it for 30 straight days? Because I think the other thing that happens is the squirrel concept, right? Like squirrel here. And again, we do it a lot in the VC world. We really do. In the SaaS world, we are all over the place. And so I say, like, if you're committed enough to do it for 30 days, then I'm going to probably say yes to that and let you do it for 30 days. And so I do think there should be, and I get a little frustrated. I'll get on my soapbox just a little bit with sales leaders who a lot of times I walk into companies, particularly at that SDR, BDR level, and they have a call script and they're being asked to read their call script, and affectionately called pimp the demo. So I get very frustrated. I don't like pimp the demo at all. And that's what I call it. I'm just like, oh, you've been asked to pimp the demo. Nice.
We need to use that. We're going to use that on future episodes.
Yeah.
Hashtag pimp the demo, right? Hashtag pimp the demo. The Christieism for this is it has to be all about them before it can be all about you, before it can be all about us. And if you're constantly putting the prospect and the customer first, And I get tired of, again, pitching, pimping the demo, all of these things. And so I think that making sure that there's formal processes for people to follow, I believe in that, with flexibility. I can't, and let's be honest, I cannot put a new SDR on the phone if they don't have a piece of paper in front of them, right? Like they will freak out on me. So my theory is when I'm training new SDRs, I get them on the phone on day 7. That's my goal, is they're on the phone by day 7. And I said to them, I know you're freaked out because you don't know everything, but if I waited till you knew everything, I'd never get you on the phone. So we're gonna have to do some OJT, right? On the job training is real. But I think like as far as specific techniques, you need to have a formalization, and we need to know what that is. How does it work? And then does it work? And then you got to have the metrics behind it. You need to have the data. So do you have other thing I walk into companies all the time. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox again. I walk into companies all the time, and individual sales reps do not have individual dashboards in their CRM system. I'm done. Like as a sales leader, yes, I have metrics that I'm reporting to the executive team and the VC about the team as a whole and their metrics, but this is all about personal sales math, right? And again, this goes back to I wrote the book because I want people to know what their swim lane and their secret weapons are and their superpowers. And so if my close rate is at 30% and the person sitting next to me is at 17, we should not have the same strategy. We should have a formula. We should have a process of formalization, something written down. But I, as the sales leader, need to say to this person, hey, listen, like you don't need to have as many discovery calls because your quality is better than this is a quality game over quantity for you. If your average sale is higher, right? I mean, the sales levers, I'm just like, these are all levers, right? We just need to push and pull the levers. But if you're listening to me and you don't have your own dashboard in the CRM system and you don't know what your close rate and your average sale and your time to close is, your sales cycle length, then shame on your sales leader. But also now I've told you, so now shame on you because now you need to go figure that out. And you need to know where you play best and play to your strengths. Why do we want to do, as sales leaders, why do I want everybody to do the same thing when not everybody performs at the same level or the same way?
The reason why a lot of people don't reach that top 10% is because they are either unable or unwilling or afraid to jettison what I like to call comfortable ways of failing or comfortable ways of mediocrity. And Kristie, I love what you just said about committing to something for 30 days. You sit in a one-on-one with somebody and you agree like, hey, this is a great way of doing it different. And then they go out, they try it 5 times. It's kind of awkward because it's an uncomfortable muscle. And then they say, heck with it, I'm going to go back to my comfortable way of mediocrity or failing. That's why they never crack the top 10%. But we've got to be careful in how we greenlight people, because I believe too, like, look, everybody's earned the right to be in the role that they're in. And as a sales leader, though, sales leaders, I'm looking at you, we've got to set the tone. We've got to create the culture that empowers these people to do their best work. Right. I don't need or want to come in and start telling them how to do their job just because I was successful at their job. That's not why I exist. It's how do I help them uncover what gaps might exist and how they can get better and better and have higher impact. I actually got written up in my first sales job because I wouldn't read off the script directly. I was selling what I knew they would buy based on listening to the customer. And my manager at the time didn't like that. So I got written up. So I started doing it their way. My sales plummeted. And by the end of the week, they took me off the plan and I went back to number 1 in the entire office. We can't green light all of these reps, but at the same time, we also can't put the same script in front of them. Last analogy. I always had the top team in my call center, right? So that means I always got to draft last whenever they came out with the team training classes. So I got this guy that nobody wanted on their team, right? Even though he was actually recruited by one of the other sales managers who I was competing with. Anyway, I get this guy on my team and, he meant well. Love the guy. But we wrote a script that was in his voice. We wrote it together and we hit all of the boxes. He won Fortune 500 his first quarter on the phones. And it was because we did it together and we did it in his voice and he had a hand in it. So it de-risked it for him. And that's what it was all about.
Yeah. I have a script and then I say to them, I need you to rewrite it in your voice because I wrote it in words that I would use and I would be comfortable with, but that's not the case for everybody. And going back to the 30-day rule, the reason I put the 30-day rule in place is because you're going to suck in the first 5. Yes. And then you're going to abort because you haven't perfected it. It's not smooth. It's not comfortable. You haven't heard the objections yet. And so like, that's why people abort. And that's why I'm like, no, you have to do it for 30 days because you're going to suck the first 5 days and you're going to think the strategy sucks when really you suck.
I love it. Brandon, what are your thoughts?
Well, we should have named this show the Soapbox episode, because
I know.
Hey, we need an image of like Kristie on a soapbox to go out with this episode, because
that'll be on the YouTube thumbnail. It'll be
on fire. Yeah,
right.
We'll have AI generate an image.
But what I liked about it is then Carson, it put you on your soapbox too, in what you were talking about. And I mean, this is partly my soapbox. Like, if we don't know ourselves, we can't lead ourselves, period. And if we talk about personalization and everything, you started talking earlier about personalized postcards and all these things. Personalization for our customers is great, and I fully agree. But if it's not personalized for us, like going back to Simon Sinek's book of Knowing Your Why, if we individually don't know why we do what we do, and we don't know where we're best at, we are going to suck. And it doesn't mean we're going to have bad results. We're going to suck life from people around us because we're not full. These vessels were not meant to be empty, but we try to shove so much wrong stuff in these vessels, and we are empty, and we're trying to suck life somewhere. If we just know ourselves and put ourselves in that right path, as Kristie says, get in your swim lane and doing things your way, doesn't mean throw the paper away. It means take the paper, edit it, and own it. And, Dave said something here that was interesting and unfortunate. And Dave, I appreciate you saying it, as he said, he has not done the inner work to know who he is or what lights his fire. Kristie, what would you say to Dave? Like, where does Dave start now? Because he's a successful sales guy. He's friends of ours. He's on the show. Where do you direct Dave? Like, what does Dave do?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about it in the book. So the first thing is like, what comes easy to you, right? So we call them strengths, but not really but what really comes easy to you? What do you like to do? Like, again, you mentioned the Jayhawks and my eyes light up, and I'm so excited about this weekend's game. It's all I want to talk about. But like, so what lights you up? What do you love to do? What do people come and ask you advice about, right? Sometimes you're not always self-aware about your superpowers. But if you thought back and thought about it and like, well, what do my other colleagues come to me and ask me advice about, or want to bounce something off about? You're starting to then identify your superpower in that way. And I think like we talk about this, as anybody who's been in therapy, that's me. I was like, we talk about doing your work, right? And so you have to do thank you, gentlemen, thank you for making me not stay out there on the boat by myself.
Absolutely.
I'm, here, I'll go all in. I don't just have a regular therapist. I also have a hypnotherapist, and I pay for her out of my business account, and I do her, she does me, and she and I meet quarterly. And you know what she does? She fills my head with positivity. She tells me that I'm going to be a great author. She tells me that I'm going to be able to handle the business that comes my way, that I'll figure out the marketing plan for my new book. Like, I tell her what I want to be told unconsciously. But I've also, I guess I would say to Dave, like, build your team. Like, your circle matters, right? The people, and by the way, like, I'll flip that, and people don't want to hear this, and I say this openly, you need to weed your garden as well. There are people in your life that are not suiting you anymore, who are not on the journey with you, who are not making you a better person or salesperson. So again, it's not always about the sales side. Do you have people in your life that are making you a better person? Do you have people in your life that are holding you accountable? Do you have accountability partners? And so, so my work includes a lot of different things. Like, I know that I need to get 5+ days of cardio in a week, or I become a not so nice person. I've always required 8 hours of sleep. So I'm in bed by 10:30 and asleep soon after that every night. And I haven't set an alarm in about 20 years. I only set an alarm when I'm going to a tropical location and I want to be there by noon on the beach with my cocktail. Then I will be willing to set the alarm for the 4:30 flight or whatever. But I don't need to do that, right? Because I take care of my body and I put myself first. And so, like, I think you can figure, and then where have you been most successful, Dave, within your career, right? Which type of sales jobs, what type of products and services, what type of industries, what type of bosses, what type of companies, what type of compensation plans? I think, like, and I make this very bold statement, but I think the average sales rep I didn't just the average. I'm talking about the person like the C to B player is leaving $5 to $10 million of total lifetime earnings on the table because they're not willing to do the work that happens outside of work in order to make sure that they're putting themselves and setting themselves up in the best position possible to be the most successful and earn the most income.
What was that number again? What was the number?
Saying 5 to 10. I'm saying 5 to 10. And I did the math on this in my book. I actually outlined because A players get a higher base salary. So right there, if you get yourself to A player status, you're going to be getting $10,000 to $20,000 more just in base salary alone over the X amount of years. And then if you're getting to 90% or to 110 or 20% of quota versus, again, the average sales rep is hitting, what do we say, 62, 64, whatever the new disgusting D number is. F, is that F, D? Like if you're making, I mean, if you take the fact that you may be making $50,000 more than the B player on your team, and you take that over X number of years or even more than that. So, and again, it's not about job jumping, by the way. I want to throw that in because people are like, oh, the fastest way to get a raise is to quit that job and get the next one. And I think it's hilarious because I do live in this VC backed SaaS world and people always want like, well, are there stock options? I'm like, what does it matter? You're not going to be here for 4 years. Like you're not going to get vested. I mean, seriously, I say to them, I go, are you planning on staying 4 years? Because that would be lovely and refreshing. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, well, that's the vesting time period. And sometimes it's 5, but now the trend is 4. But I was like, if you're not going to be here for 4 years, then your stock options just don't matter. Like, and so like, but over time, I truly think that people, if you got to A player status in your 30s and you worked till you were 60, you don't even have to work to 65 at that point, right? Or you work to 58, there's a lot of money to be made, and you're leaving a lot of money on the table by not taking the right roles, knowing yourself well enough to put yourself in the best position. Like, why wouldn't you want to, like I said, like instead of reading The Bachelor, would you be willing, instead of watching The Bachelor, would you reading a book instead? Would you be willing to give up? I mean, seriously, I think I'm talking about like 2 to 5 hours a week of doing something differently than you're doing today to make so much more money than you're making today.
Yeah. And just being intentional about what fuels you, what you're great at, and that you can use to go to that next level. I was mentoring somebody earlier today, I mentioned, and that was one of the things we uncovered. They said, I'm fueled by money. Great. There's a lot of ways to make more money. There's a lot of different roles. It doesn't necessarily have to be AE that you make the move to, but being intentional about what you're building out and also how you have impact. And I'm like, what do you want to be known for? It's like, well, I'm the guy that everybody goes to for XYZ. Perfect. Right. Who knows that? Who knows that? And how are you putting that out into the world? Well, my team knows it. My boss knows it. Great. I want all of the teams and all of the bosses to know about that. Could you be blogging? Could you be doing an open office hours where colleagues can come to you and ask questions? Like, think big picture about how you can break down barriers to amplify what you're doing. And if you have high impact, you automatically become the obvious choice for whatever you want to do next. Now, just because you're the obvious choice doesn't mean you're going to get it. But if you're the obvious choice for a lot of different things, you're going to write your own ticket and you're going to make all the money you could ever fathom.
Brandon, I know you wanted to add something on that as well.
Well, I want to apologize to Dave because Dave came back on later and he said, I did a typo. I have done the work, not I have not done the work.
Sorry, Dave.
But
free advice for somebody else.
Yeah, the information was still great. And I learned from a therapist a long time ago that you always have to assess what are your energy gainers and what are your energy drainers.
I love
that. If you don't know the difference, you're screwed.
Well, and I want to kind of wrap this up with an area that we were going to spend some time on today.
Not his hand raised, though.
I was going to say, and Daniel, yes, I will leverage ChatGPT to get all the takeaways after the episode.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. So
nice, I like it.
And Brandon, we've seen this. What I think is kind of ironic is, we talk about getting to know yourself better, your style, your voice.
Yeah,
AI is a great tool for that. We're finding.
Yeah.
It kind of allows you to mirror yourself a bit and work through and go, God, is that really my voice? Is that how I really want to sound? We have that comment assessment tool, Brandon, where we look at, your different things. But I'm really seeing over and over as people start to use AI, it can be a way to get to know themselves, even though ironically you say it's kind of dehumanizing things or it's taking the personal part out of it, but it can really help you the other way. And I do think that you're right, Kristie, is that most people don't understand where they can have the biggest impact, and that biggest impact will result in the biggest outcome for them in their career. And we kind of get into places because we stumble into places, right? And then we end up trying to tread water, maybe, if you want to call it that, in that place, versus really by design putting it in there. So I think there's a lot of great points there.
And Kristie, there was a ton of comments in the chat about your book. People that want to know where it is, when and where they can get it. Can you tell us more?
Yes. So you can go to sellingyourwayin.com, and there's a form that you can fill out right there on the homepage that will give you I'm going to inform you every step of the way. So when the book design comes out, in fact, the people who sign up for that, I'm going to involve you in the book design. So I'm going to give you all of the options and let you vote. So yeah, sellingyourwayin.com. And then we'll get on the book list, and then for sure you'll know about everything that's happening all along the way.
Beautiful. Hey, can we ask, just because I don't have it, Dave or Daniel or somebody that's in there, would you write that in the comments so everybody else can see it? That would be great.
Yeah, we can't comment on our own stuff. So,
well, we'd have to go open up another tab, and I feel rude, like I'm not being personal with
there
everybody.
It is. It's in there.
Thank you guys. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I don't know who that was, LinkedIn user, but thank you.
Yep.
So guys, I think that next time we need to find a guest that's a bit more passionate about their topic and that care a bit more. But Chris, aside from that,
we're going to keep the good times rolling next week.
There we go. Yep. Trust me, your next guest is also going to be passion filled.
Mr. Candor, Mike Weinberg. So.
And by the way, Kristie, I like Belgian beer too.
Okay, Brandon, good to know. Good to know. Yeah. Good. Yeah. I mean, I love a good Belgian beer myself. Yes. With an orange, with what kind? Do you do fruit? Brandon, do you do fruit? I need to know.
You know what? It's funny is I don't like any fruit flavored beers at all, but I do like an orange in my Belgian, wheat ale or whatever.
I'm right there with you. Orange it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kristie. Definitely go to the website, sign up for the book. We'll have you back after the book is out to get some feedback or what you've learned, if you'll put up with us again. And so Mike Weinberg next week, the St. Louis journey continues.
Yeah, nice.
And it's also Carson's birthday next Wednesday.
Oh, nice.
So it's true. I turned 29 again.
I know.
Well, instead of Jayhawk football and basketball, you can talk Purdue with Mike and golf. Right. Mike and I constantly on Instagram are back and forth during basketball season. So yes, he had children that went to some of the schools, and unfortunately, he had a daughter who went to K-State. So that was an unfortunate mistake that he and his family made, but it is what it is.
I love it.
We will not bring that up probably.
We just need a trash talking episode as well. We'll have our soapbox episode. We'll have our trash talking episode. We got
the social selling in sports. I'm in for that one.
We should have one where we get back all the previous guests and we do like this "We Are the World" type thing.
Oh, brother.
Hey, Carson.
Tom is not down for that. Tom is like, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Carson, I'm going to put the pressure on you. What's the movie reference today? I don't think I heard one.
Oh, that's a good question. What would the movie reference be? We talked about controlling income and owning your life.
Top Gun, perhaps.
I like that. The best of the best.
Best of the best. Best of the best. Yeah.
The best of the best. Top Gun.
I think that's a great way to.
Well, that's our sign-off music for today.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you again, Kristie. Carson, take us home on our end here. We missed you the last couple of weeks.
Thank you, everyone, for being on today. Kristie, thank you. Always good to see you. And until next time, for our audience, happy social selling.
Thank everyone.
Thank you.